I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good morning, Bowling Green. Good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to everyone listening on the internet, wherever or whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I am here with my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together, Rebecca and I are going to bring you a fantastic hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your family and your co-workers and the groundhogs. We saw a couple woodchucks today coming in. And
a squirrel.
And squirrels and basically all those small mammals and all the big birds like hawks and falcons and things that eat those small mammals. And
I'm afraid the bunnies are already tucked into bed this hour of the morning. It's too late for them.
Right. But all of us, bunnies, woodchucks, birds of prey, we're all wrapped up together on this fantastic planet called Earth. And we have a show that meets or exceeds our usual standards of excellence today. We are going to chat for just a few minutes here. And in that light, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And if you want to call in the next couple minutes, because this is a call-in show, 877-909-1007. If you want to call in and share your fatherly eco stories with us, we'd be happy to listen to them. Basically, did your father expose you to nature? Did he take you hunting or fishing or hiking? Did he teach you plants or animals? If you wanted to come talk about that, that'd be a good thing to call in about here on Father's Day. So we're just going to chat for another 10 minutes or so, and then we have a guest calling in, knock on wood, if everything goes according to plan. Our good friend Kevin Kamps from Beyond Nuclear will be calling in, and he's going to update us on the Palisades nuclear scam going on up there not too far away in Michigan, and also give us a little background, a little history on the scammer, the Holtec, the international, the corporation that's getting all these billions of dollars. And so looking forward to that. And then we'll hear from our fantastic sponsors and patrons, without whom we could not do this show. And then Rebecca, you've got a interesting topic for us today. What will we be discussing?
I'm doing a thing I'm calling the not so fabulous, somewhat radioactive Baker Brothers.
Okay, somewhat radioactive Baker Brothers.
Yes.
That would be like a horror sequel to the Baker Brothers.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Baker Bake the Fabulous Baker Boys, or whatever it was. I can't remember.
Okay, well then we have some ecological news, and we've got some very interesting ecological news this week, and we're going to end, hopefully, as we try to end on a high note, so it's worth sticking around for. Okay, so you may have already noticed, you may have been gotten a notice on your phone like I did this morning, that a heat wave is on the way. This is the same heat wave which had baked the Southwest for the past week or so, with temperatures well in the hundreds. and we won't be having it quite that hot. We're going to be getting up, I guess, into the high 90s and so forth. But it is coming, and so knowing this morning as I got up to do the show, what I like to do is fill the house with cool air. So when I got up at 5 o'clock, the house was 74 degrees inside, which is comfortable. But what I did was I put a fan in the door down in the backyard, which is nice and cool. I opened the attic windows and I blew it was 57 degrees when I woke up. So I filled the house with the cold air from outside, and I've dropped the temperature from 74 down to 70 in just a couple hours using just a fan. Didn't have to run the AC at all. And that's partly because we in my household, we try to use as little electricity as possible. And we have gotten pretty successful at it. In fact, we just had our May electric bill came, and as regular listeners know, we have a 6 kilowatt solar system on our house. And so in the month of May, we only used 380 kilowatt hours, but we generated 628 kilowatt hours of solar that went back onto the grid. And so we're very happy about that, that we actually, using solar, generated almost twice as much power as we used. And of course, that power went out to our neighbors' houses. And since the city only pays us 75% what they pay for their usual wholesale rate, we actually saved our neighbors some money because they were buying cheaper electricity from us than they would from the coal plant in Illinois, where Bowling Green gets most of its electricity. But so this is very happy. We're very happy that we had a good month there, solar power wise. But this is just an individual effort. This is just one household. And there has been a movement, sort of a theme in some environmental reporting lately that kind of discourages the whole individual efforts thing. There was a story in Grist back on June 12th, and the title was "How the Recycling Symbol Lost Its Meaning." And the gist of the story in Grist was that only 5% of plastics are recycled now. And a lot of environmentalists are calling plastic recycling a false solution. And this article went all the way back to the history back in the 1950s, when cans and bottles from pop companies were starting to litter the highways. The corporations created the Keep America Beautiful organization, which encouraged people to recycle and not throw their pop bottles on the ground and stuff. But it was one of the first shifts in taking the responsibility for the trash away from the companies that make the trash and putting it on you and me, on the consumer. And so shifting this responsibility has been very successful, very profitable for the companies that make the stuff that we throw away. And so that they could frame it in the idea that you're not recycling enough. But of course, that doesn't really solve the problem. We still have that 95% of plastic that doesn't get recycled, and it's not your personal fault, okay? Don't feel guilty. It's not your fault. It's the way our trash system is set up. But this idea that the personal actions aren't as important is being echoed on a lot of different news places and so forth. PBS, Public Broadcasting, has a program, has a YouTube channel called Terra, PBS Terra. And about a month ago, they did a video podcast, like 8 minutes long, and the title was "Every Little Thing." And the whole point of this PBS Terra YouTube video was to attack the whole idea of personal action, claiming that personal actions don't matter, like driving your electric car, putting solar panels on your roof, that these things aren't really going to do it, and can even be negative because they give people the sense that they're doing something when they're not really changing the whole system, which of course is what we need. We need there to be such a widespread changeover that the entire system of generating and using energy changes. Now, I disagree. I disagree with PBS Terra, for a couple of reasons.
Well, it's a half truth. I mean, like, okay, if you it's okay to skip the recycling if you have to go to Washington and get a bill passed that you will definitely get passed if you show up there fixing something major in the environment. If you have to choose.
Right.
But yeah, it's also your recycling is also good.
Right, and that's
Individual efforts are also good.
and that's the key that you're saying. If you have to choose,
Yeah.
I mean, if you had
You
to
mostly don't.
yeah, but mostly you don't. Mostly
Yeah.
you can do both, and in fact,
Yeah.
you should do both, because even though the individual actions haven't changed the whole system yet, they are definitely having an effect. I mean, my 6 kilowatt system, since I installed it in 2019, has saved 21 tons of CO2, because that's 21 tons of CO2.
Joe is a crazy man who's gonna like bring his cans and bottles with him to Washington D.C. and be like rinsing them out in his friggin' hotel room sink or something.
Yeah, I do kind of do that. So, but and so that's a lot of CO2. But choosing an electric car actually saves even more power or more CO2. In fact, my electric vehicle, I've saved about, you produce about 7 tons less CO2 per year on average if you use an electric car than if you use a gas car. And over the 5 years I've had my car, so I've saved 35 tons of CO2 from car exhaust. Okay, so, and these individual actions do add up. We've been reporting about how California, for the past several months now, has met or exceeded 100% of demand from solar, and a huge portion of that, like I think it's close to half, is from rooftop solar that people put on their roofs, because it both reduces the amount of power they take off the grid and puts the excess power onto the grid. And one thing that kind of shows you how important these individual efforts are is that back in 2017, and we missed this law, but back in 2017, when the evil Larry Householder was still running the Ohio legislature, the Ohio House, Ohio passed a law limiting the size of a solar system people can put on their house to 120% of their average use averaged out over the previous 3 years.
Well, but if you put a solar system on your house, what about the people living in the solar system and all the little planets there?
No.
Joe?
Right. Well, you just aggregate all that.
Right. Okay.
And then you get 120%.
I think he means a solar energy system.
Yes. That is what I mean.
I'm ridiculous.
But what that means is that the utility companies that we now know were controlling Larry Householder were so concerned about the rooftop solar that they had the state legislature put this limit on it. Now, luckily, that limit only doesn't apply to like municipal utilities. It does apply to most households in the state, though, unfortunately. But it's a sign that individual efforts can make a big difference. But of course, PBS Terra is correct in that doesn't make up for changing policy. That doesn't make up for lobbying people for getting the correct laws passed. Like a good law to pass would be to repeal that 2017 law limiting household solar systems to 120%. It's more realistic to put like a kilowatt limit on it, like 20 kilowatts is a good limit that a lot of states have, which is really big for a household system, but way more than 120% of the average household use. But people do use their personal actions to justify supporting bad policies. Like I remember when Bowling Green was we were fighting for a plastic bag ban, and we almost got it through the legislature. At the last minute, one of the Democrats flip-flopped, and when the Republicans saw him flip-flop, they're like, oh, we'll flip-flop too, because the whole legislature was going to vote for the plastic bag ban. But one of the people who testified against it was a woman who owns an ice cream shop in Bowling Green. And I'll never forget, she got up there and the first thing she said is, I compost. I compost everything in my kitchen. And it's like, okay. So because you compost, you're okay putting hundreds of pounds of plastic into the environment
Yeah,
every
that
year.
really doesn't negate the damage.
Yeah, exactly. But some people do use it like that, and so Tara is correct in that point, that the emotional justification, the emotional smugness you get from doing something personal is no substitute for working to change laws and policies. And so to that extent they're right, but for the most part they're wrong. Go ahead and get your solar panels and put your roof, get your electric car too. And nukes are actually a perfect example of this, because we can't make the, we can't change the policies that have put nuclear power into place. And like Granholm up there in Michigan is spending billions of Michigan tax dollars on reviving this dead Palisades nuclear plant. And that's a bad policy decision, and that has to be fought on a policy level. So that won't go away just because you put solar panels on your roof, although that'll help, but it doesn't change the fact that you've got to get involved in the political process and put some pressure on Granholm to.
Yeah, I'm just picturing us when like the flames reach the beaches of Lake Erie and we have bad decisions to make, being like, but I recycled.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so to that end, I am happy to have our guest on the line, Kevin Kamps. Kevin, are you there?
I am.
Yes. Welcome back to For a Great Future. If you could just tell everybody your name and your title.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Kamps, and I serve as radioactive waste specialist at Beyond Nuclear in Washington, D.C.
Right. Thanks for coming. Now,
Sure.
so there's two things I wanted to talk to you about today, and one of them is the what's happening with the Palisades reactor. So I guess they just recently had like an open house. Could you sort of give us an update on what's going on up there?
Yeah, so the company is called Holtec International, and they did hold what they called an open house, ironically enough, at their emergency operations facility in Benton Harbor, which is 15 miles away from the Palisades nuclear power plant. And the whole idea, it's kind of a post-Fukushima action that was taken by the previous owner, Entergy, to locate their emergency operations center some distance from the nuke in case something like Fukushima happens at Palisades. At least their control center, their emergency response center, would be out of, the immediate vicinity of this catastrophic radioactivity release. So that's where they're holding this, what they called an open house. It was more of a jobs fair, and it was really ridiculously shallow. Like, they had some poster boards, they had some Holtec people walking around who wouldn't really answer any questions. And it might have been because we had so many protesters show up, especially immediate neighbors from the Palisades Park Country Club, which is a community of about 200 cottages. It's 125 years old. And unfortunately, it's the next door neighbor to Palisades nuclear power plant. So some of the residents, there's a lot of disease in the park. Of course, Palisades, Holtec now says they have nothing to do with it. But there's a very high incidence of thyroid cancer and other thyroid pathology as one example in this community. And that's a very rare disease. I've heard that there are something like 20 people in the park who suffer from thyroid pathology. And of such a small community, there shouldn't be a single case. It's such a rare disease, but it is related to radioactive releases. So anyway,
right, because the plants release radioactive iodine, and that gets into the thyroid and causes the thyroid cancer.
Yeah, it's very alarming because radioactive iodine-131 was one of the major health impacts from Chernobyl as well as Fukushima. It really shouldn't be in the environment at Palisades unless they've had some serious releases that we don't know about. So that's a health concern. What's going on, though, like you said, Energy Secretary Granholm and Governor Whitmer went to Palisades on March 27th and announced a $1.5 billion federal loan for the restart of this closed reactor. It closed 2 years ago under the previous owner. And then Holtec snuck in supposedly to decommission, which is dismantle the facilities, clean up the radioactive contamination, manage the high-level radioactive waste. What they were really doing, though, was applying in secret immediately upon taking ownership to DOE for these billions of dollars in bailouts. In addition to the 1.5 billion announced, in March, another 300 million from the state of Michigan. And then I've been trying to follow all the subsidies and bailouts requested, and for the restart alone, it's $8.3 billion.
Phew.
And then for 2 small modular reactors that Holtec wants to build there, so-called, another $7.4 billion. So it's a grand total of $15.7 billion just at the Palisades site, and perhaps also up at its sibling reactor, also closed, Big Rock Point in northern Michigan. But it's just an astounding, shocking amount of money. And then the safety risks are off the chart. We can talk more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you sure could put up a lot of solar panels for what was that, what was the total again?
$8.3 billion just on the restart.
$3 billion. And that's their estimate so far, right? And
Good point.
and historic.
It's going to escalate, and they're asking for other bailouts all the time. It's actually hard to keep up.
Mm-hmm. Right, because historically, the estimates in year one are literally a fraction of the estimates, a couple years down the line. And in fact, we have a story in our news portion about that happening over in California with the Diablo Canyon. So so it's a pattern in the nuclear industry. But this one point about this is that Holtec has never been a nuclear plant running corporation, right? They've never actively run a nuclear plant.
Yeah, that's right. They've never operated an atomic reactor. They've never built an atomic reactor. So it's kind of on-the-job training, which is really scary at Palisades. Their bread and butter since 1986 has been high-level radioactive waste storage, mostly. They make the containers, and they do a very poor job of it. And then to some extent, racks in the indoor wet storage pools for high-level waste. And they have become, unfortunately, the lead company in the country right now on decommissioning closed nuclear power plants. But we did a FOIA request to the state of Michigan and got a hold of this secret application to DOE in July of 2022, asking for billions in bailouts, but also laying out their strategy, their business strategy. So it was remarkable that we got a hold of this thing.
Uh-huh.
They never wanted us to see it. And one of the things Holtec said in there is, yeah, we're into decommissioning. In fact, we're the national leader. But our real motivation is to get a hold of these sites so that we can build small modular reactors there. That's our real objective. But they forgot to tell anybody that. So it's a form of business fraud, but they're not being prosecuted for it.
Wow. And just to be clear on the small modular reactors, nobody has built a small modular reactor, right? I mean, those things right now are still in the realm of fantasy.
Yeah, and the lead project in the country out in Utah, and it was going to export most of its, it was in Idaho, but it was going to export its electricity to Utah. It went belly up. NewScale is the company. And despite huge federal subsidies, they had to cancel the project. And that was the lead development project in the country for SMRs.
They canceled, but not before a lot of money got thrown down that hole.
Yeah.
Could you give us a little history on Holtec? I mean, are they like what you'd call a trustworthy company?
No, they're very crooked. They're even criminal. I mean, the one criminal transgression that is solidly documented is a bribe that Holtec's CEO was very involved with, $50,000 to a federal employee in Alabama at the Browns Ferry nuclear power plant in exchange for a contract. And they got caught, they got busted. The individual who took the bribe was in serious trouble. What happened to Holtec, though, was they paid a $2 million fine, which isn't much money at all for this company. And they got a 60-day ban and bar on doing business with the federal agency called the Tennessee Valley Authority. And then they carried on with the contract. So it was a cost of doing business for Holtec.
Wow.
But to compound their wrongdoing, later, Holtec CEO, the same guy, Krishna Singh, lied under oath on an application form in the state of New Jersey, where they're headquartered, for a $260 million tax break. He was asked, has Holtec ever been banned and barred from doing business with a state or federal agency? And he said no, under oath. It was a lie. He eventually got caught by journalists at ProPublica and WNYC, the NPR station in New York City. And here it is many years later, and that law breaking is still a controversy. The AG of New Jersey has taken the case to the state Supreme Court. He's trying to claw back this money, which Holtec did get. They got the $260 million, and it's still a live controversy about a decade later.
Well, in Singh's defense, since he only got fined $2 million for the bribery, I could see how it could slip his mind, since that's like chump change to him. It's like, oh, that's
and
right.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless examples. I mean, it's almost sometimes daily scandals that erupt around the country or internationally with this company. The most recent one that I've seen comes from the Pilgrim nuclear power plant, which thankfully is being dismantled and decommissioned, unlike Palisades. But you have to wonder, are they going to build small modular reactors there? Maybe not, because the groundswell of resistance is so strong. But whistleblowers have been informing local watchdogs as to what's going on at Pilgrim. A really sickening move by Holtec was they were blocked from dumping radioactive wastewater into Cape Cod Bay. And so what did they do? They started evaporating it. So instead of eating it in your seafood, you can breathe it in directly. And whistleblowers have been revealing how bad the radiation monitoring is inside the facility. So the workers are going to be the hardest hit by this. They're the closest to it happening. But, of course, local residents downwind are in harm's way as well. So that's the latest scandal.
And breathing in radioactive tritium, as a water vapor in the air is actually more dangerous than, like, drinking it in your drinking water, isn't it?
It could be. An especially dangerous scenario is called organically bound tritium. Tritium is radioactive hydrogen. So it is difficult to impossible to filter. But you could store it for the 123 years of its hazard, and then it will radioactively decay. But instead, they'd rather just dump it in the environment willy-nilly. And so if you breathe in tritium, or if you drink it, or if you eat it in your food, and it organically binds in your DNA molecule or your cells or your tissues, it can do serious damage at such an intimate level of your anatomy. It's considered a weak beta emitter. That's as an external exposure. But if it's in your DNA molecule and it has this beta impact, it's a significant impact. It can cause cancer, it can cause birth defects, it can cause genetic damage.
Yeah. So we have an untrustworthy company which has already gotten billions and is lined up to get billions more that could be going to putting up wind turbines and solar panels. But so it's not a good situation up there right now.
So we have a fight on our hands. We call it the zombie reactor restart nuclear nightmare. There's a mouthful.
Yeah, it'd be a good movie title, maybe. So, all right. Well, unfortunately, Kevin, we're actually already running low on time. Is there anything you'd like to add about this whole thing? And if you could tell people how they could follow you folks and stay on top of this controversy.
Yeah, well, just to end on a positive note, I guess, just yesterday, day before in California, you mentioned Diablo Canyon. There's a lot of parallels between the zombie reactor at Palisades and the zombie reactors at Diablo Canyon. Just yesterday, day before, the California legislature said no to another request for $400 million in loans from the state to extend operations at Diablo when the company had previously agreed to shut down this year and next year. And I raise the good news because they have been getting away with murder out there for a couple years. I'm just hoping that things are changing and some of this nightmare is coming to an end. So we're going to work hard in Michigan and try to stop it up here. If folks would like to, be in touch or learn more, our website is www.beyondnuclear.org.
All right. And just for information, Kevin, we did a story last week that there was a big poll in Michigan, and it turned out that nuclear was the least popular form of energy in the state amongst voters. So
That's great to hear. I didn't know about it. I mean, if you listen to the news media, if you listen to Governor Whitmer, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But we have a very proud anti-nuclear history in Michigan.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that people are not falling for it.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to that survey. It was pretty
Cool. Thanks so much.
Pretty heartening. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, and we got to move on with the show. Okay.
Thanks for having me. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so now it's time to hear from our sponsors.
For a Green Future is also brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They also restore wildlife habitats and lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There are several ways to get a hold of them and find out what's happening. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. Another is to visit their website, www.wcparks.org. The website again is www.wcparks.org. They are also available on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and many others. Just search for WC Parks. That's the Wood County Park District, and we're very grateful for their support.
And we're very grateful to the support of our patrons. And these are brave souls who've gone to patreon.com, Patreon, and there they found our Patreon page for A Green Future. They looked up different membership levels. They chose a membership level that matched their budget. And every month now, a little bit comes out of their accounts and comes over to us. And that's how we can afford to keep this fantastic show on the air for you. So that's patreon.com, Patreon, and search for A Green Future. Thank you so much to our patrons. Okay, Rebecca, your turn. What have you got?
Okay, well, a couple weeks ago, I was, a friend of my roommates, actually, named Logan, was taking me on to do some errands for the household there or something, very kindly. And he happened to sort of, apropos of nothing, start babbling about something about a uranium plant in West Toledo.
Huh.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then like a couple weeks later, it occurred to me, hey, I've never heard of that, and I'm on an environmentalist radio station. I should maybe tell people.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked Logan, and he sent me this entire article from the Wall Street Journal called Wastelands, America's Forgotten Nuclear Legacy. And it mentioned a place called Baker Brothers Plant in near West Toledo, kind of just northwest of the Old West End, kind of between, it's over off of, between Detroit and Albion on the Post and Harlow. It's now like some kind of an electrical business of some kind. But yeah, it was for a long time contaminated, maybe still contaminated by uranium, according to government records. Although it was cleaned up, hopefully thoroughly, under the formerly utilized Sites Remedial Action Program, or FUSRAP. FUSRAP in 1995. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What they were doing up there in the 40s was machining uranium metal rods into little slugs for the AEC's Hanford reactor and Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Somebody mentioned some other plant in Tennessee. I don't know. But it was a couple of energy plants. And this is according to the Department of Energy. Says they were doing this in 1943 and 1944, so just a couple of years. It was apparently subtracted by DuPont and the University of Chicago, and I don't know, some other agencies were involved, alphabet soup. But yeah, the radiation radiation in excess of DOA guidelines was found in 1989-90 survey. Prior to that, there was no survey for 50 years.
Okay.
So from 1944 to 1990, it was just sitting there contaminating the heck out of that whole neighborhood. And
Wow.
that's a neighborhood back in there. It's
Mhm.
the plant, like we drove by it on the way here, and there's like a little kind of almost an alley, and across that are some people's garages, on the one side that we were on. It's a lot of Toledoans don't go there because it's weird. It's kind of cut off by the freeway. There's a lot of one-way streets. It's run down. You really wouldn't unless you work there or live there.
Mhm.
There's just no reason to. I believe I have actually walked by it before. On my way south somewhere, I don't know, from the central. I went down Albion and twisted and turned and somehow got out of that area. But yeah, so yeah, that wasn't good. The current owner is the Doug Beat Company, who has some kind of electrical business. It's located at 2551 Harlow Place at the corner of Post and Harlow. If you want to go see it, hopefully not hang out for a super long time.
Yes.
West of Detroit and north of Delaware. If you go up Detroit, Post is right there, and it's at the end of it. And they machine between 90 and 300 tons of material, according to the DOE. And this was apparently primarily an isotope, I think, called uranium-238.
Mhm.
And the DOE learned in 1992 that someone had at some point dumped contaminated soil debris from this site at a farm in Ottawa Lake, Michigan, as fill material somewhere out at Peel Road. Somebody's
Okay.
farm on Peel Road with a pond or something. So they had to remediate that too. From the plant, I believe the remediation moved 356 square yards of low-level materials and 5 cubic yards of mixed waste, whatever that is. And from the other property, from the Ottawa Lake property, it was, I think, 1,920 cubic yards of contaminated soil was taken from up there. So it was a lot of work. They had to do some of it by hand in the tricky spots, apparently.
Wow, I had no idea that uranium machining was happening in Toledo. Yeah.
Me neither. And this is pretty much within slightly longish walking distance of my house.
Wow. So we're going to have to head back out there with I've got my little radiation monitor. We'll go see what the numbers are.
Absolutely.
But it is scary, especially since the cleanup standards, back in the 1980s and 1990s were actually pretty low because they were operating under the belief, every time they've studied radiation, they found that the lower doses are still dangerous, but all along the history of it, they've said, oh, well, this level must be safe, and then they discover, oh, that's not safe, and then, well, this level must be safe, and then it's like, so
not so much.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. Yeah, but there are these places, like the Wall Street Journal article said, there's thousands of these places all around the country. We've got one not far from Bowling Green over in Lucky, Ohio. There's a FUSRAP, a super fund cleanup of radioactive contamination going on that nobody knows about. And actually, I've been trying to get them on the show to interview them for years, but they always duck. They never respond. They don't want to be interviewed.
Oddly enough,
apparently.
yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks for that scary update.
You're welcome. For what it's worth.
All right, and so now on to ecological news, and we got a fair number of stories to get to today. The first one, a few months ago, actually, we reported on some geoengineering that was going on in California, where they were spraying salt water up into the clouds. You remember that story?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
mentioned.
Try to brighten the clouds up. And luckily or happily, the city council has stopped the study. And there's a story in the website Fast Company on June 5th. And the title will give you some idea of where the reporter was coming from on this story. Title was Geoengineering Study Canceled this cloud brightening study wasn't a health risk, but a California city's officials blocked it anyway. And so it was a very lopsided article. And basically they only quoted people who were involved in the study and getting paid to do the study, all, whining, crying about the fact that they got stopped, and they're searching for some other place to do this. But there was the city did do a health study, and they said, well, there's no real health risk of spraying salt up into the clouds. But the thing, my point, and that I made last time when they started doing this, was that we still actually don't understand the ecology of clouds. I mean, it's just recently, just within the last year, that research has come out saying that we've known for a long time there's bacteria up there, but scientists have always assumed that they were sort of just passing through, like they got sucked up in a dust storm or
They don't
a
just
tornado.
live in communities in this cloud.
That's what the scientists thought, and we had a NASA scientist on like a couple of years ago who said that.
Okay.
I asked him, do they actually live up there? He said no. But now, just in the past year, more research shows that guess what? They do live up there. They can live inside the little droplets in a cloud, and there they find light and they find food.
Makes sense.
So they are, our atmosphere has a functioning microbial ecosystem.
Wow.
And we have no idea how it works, what it's doing, or what would happen if we sterilized it by filling the clouds with salt water. So
that's the freakiest thing I've heard since the thing about having invisible mites all over your face.
Yes, it's all part of the invisible world, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're talking about the ones in your eyelashes and things.
Yeah.
So
Eating your little dead skin cells.
So this reporter for Fast Company was all sad because they canceled it, but I say good on you for the city council in California that stopped this, and I hope they don't find somewhere else to just try it again, because again, this is like deep sea nodule mining. There's all these things where we don't understand the ecosystem we're about to destroy.
Yeah, it is deep sea stuff on that has something to do with the Cloverfield monster in the movies, right? I think it did.
I don't know. I think
Do you want Cloverfield monsters?
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, next story. This is a story on June 12th in the website Electrek, and the title is "The One, quote, Simple Trick, unquote, Paris used to reduce air pollution 40% ahead of the Olympics." And really quickly, basically what Paris did was it banned cars.
Yeah.
And it worked great.
It's not really a trick, it's kind of common sense.
Yeah, fewer cars, less air pollution. And what Paris has done is they've done an outright ban in the center of the city. So the middle of Paris, no cars. You can walk around and go to your little coffee shop without fear of getting run down or anything. And it's improved the quality of life for everybody in Paris. Everybody loves it because they can just walk around and do what they want without having to dodge cars like they used to. They've also increased for the part of the city that you can still drive around in. They increased parking fees on SUVs specifically, which are the most polluting, most gas guzzling cars. SUVs pay 3 times the parking rates of regular cars. They've also put in place a ton of cycle lanes and cycle paths, not psychopaths, right? Cycle paths.
They're dealing with the population. Bring the population down by introducing psychopaths.
Right. Luckily, that's not what they're doing.
Yeah, good.
And they've been encouraging the use of electric scooters, which all over the world, these electric scooters are dropping demand for oil by like 1 million barrels a day. So they're really making a difference. And so, this just reminded me the difference here, and I do want to point out, since this is a sports channel, that the cleaner the air, the better the the sports performance.
Yepers.
Right.
You don't want to be gasping while you're trying to make a touchdown or whatever.
Yeah, if you could breathe.
It's baseball season, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
if
of
you
course,
could breathe,
everybody is equally affected, one assumes.
True.
So, probably both opposing teams have trouble running as fast.
right? Well, but in the Olympics, you're trying to break records.
True, yes,
Yeah, and you
that's
can
true.
run faster when
Yeah.
the air's cleaner, so it's
Definitely.
likely to be a better Olympics because there's less air pollution. And it brought to mind what happened here in the U.S. back in 1984, the Los Angeles Olympics. In the opening ceremonies, they had trained this big, beautiful eagle to fly in over the stadium and like circle around the Olympic flame and like go down and land. And
It's going to be a sad story, isn't it?
it is a very sad
no.
story because LA's smog killed the eagle.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it died.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it died just before the Olympics were supposed to start,
Oh,
and there
geez.
was no eagle in the opening ceremonies.
I guess not.
Because, there wasn't time to like hire a taxidermist or anything
Wow.
like that. So,
Put it on little wires.
yeah, no, there just wasn't an eagle. So it's a very sad story, but it's we've come a long way since 1984. That's my point here. Paris has actually reduced their air pollution 40%, which is a great thing. And if they had an eagle, it would still be alive today.
Right.
Okay, on to South Korea, which is a sad story. And this is a story back on May 9th on CNN. And the title is, South Korea birth rate is so low, the president wants to create a ministry to tackle it. So,
That sounds ominous.
yeah, South Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the world. The number of children born to each woman in the population is only 0.72. And it actually dropped 25% in 1 year. It had been, well, not 25%, 0.06%. It had been 0.78 in 2022. Now it's 0.72. And the thing is, you need to have at least 2.1 just to maintain your population, to not lose population. And so what they're doing is, what these countries, a lot of the Asian countries have very low fertility rates and are losing population. And what they're doing, they're putting all the blame on the women. They're saying, the women are getting selfish, they want to work, they want to have, jobs instead of raising kids. And the thing is that I think there's also some environmental factors here. And part of what gives a lie to this idea that it's just women not wanting to have kids is that the rates...
Also, you could improve the maternity leave.
Yeah. See, the thing is, they're trying that.
Yeah. Okay,
they're improving
good.
maternity leaves. They're giving people cash payouts if they have kids. They're trying all this stuff with money, both like Japan and South Korea and a lot of the Asian countries, and it's not working.
Oh my gosh!
Which suggests that it's not just
it may not be about personal
economic,
choices then.
right?
Yeah.
And the rate of in vitro fertilizations has skyrocketed because people aren't getting pregnant.
Yeah.
So they're trying all these, they're trying to get pregnant. They're trying all these procedures, and they're doing things like they take trips to think maybe they could get pregnant if they leave the country.
So some people will recognize this as sort of the prequel to The Handmaid's Tale. That's kind of how it starts.
Kind of scary.
Yeah.
But the thing about South Korea specifically, though, is that in addition to the low fertility rate, they have a relatively high infant mortality rate. So that, like some of the other countries with low fertility rates, like Italy, only have a fraction of the infant mortality rate. So that suggests to me there's something environmental going on, because it's both
and or medical.
People aren't getting pregnant, and they're having trouble carrying the babies to term.
South Korea has a fair to middling medical system, don't they?
They have a good medical system, but they have very lax environmental laws, and for a country their size, they have a ton of nuclear plants.
Oh, yay.
They're one of the most nuclear concentrated countries in the world. And they've also had a number of other environmental problems. Like a few years back, they had a chip factory just dumped a ton of solvents into the water. And so one morning, everybody in like a third of South Korea woke up went to turn on the water to get coffee and immediately became violently ill
Oh my.
because there was this toxic chemical in the water.
Oh, boy.
And so, I think things like that might be affecting their fertility rate.
Yeah, could
So-
be, could be.
So anyway, we'll see what happens with South Korea, but that's, with the combination of nukes and other sorts of pollution, I think may have something to do with it. Okay, on to brighter news. Bloomberg, June 7th, quote, long-range EVs now cost less than average new car in U.S. So if you're thinking about getting in
Nice.
an electric vehicle with a range of at least 300 miles, that's the definition of long-range EV.
Just get the cheapest kind, like it says on my family crest.
Right. And so like the Honda Ioniq, only $35,250 before the 30% federal tax credit, which takes the price down into the mid $25,000 range for a new car. For leases, you could lease an electric Ioniq for less than $250 a month, for like $240 a month. So, and Jeep is about to come out with a $25,000 electric car. So that's before the federal 30% tax credit. So you can get a brand new electric Jeep with a more than 300-mile range for like $18,000. So, I mean, it's starting to get a little ridiculous, folks, to stick with the internal combustion engines. And once you make the switch, you don't go back. People, love the electric. They're quiet. They accelerate like crazy. They have almost no maintenance costs because you don't have to change the oil, and the brakes last forever. And, I had a kind of an interesting experience. I was charging my car up at there's a bunch of chargers over there near Central and Reynolds, there over at the Yark Ford. And again, I'm not getting paid for any of this, although I should be. But I was charging up my Wonder Van with my little J1772 charger, and I saw over on the fast chargers there were two people who had Ford Mustangs, and they were using the fast chargers, and they were just hanging out. It was a nice day, so they were just they were just chatting, and I went over and joined them, and we talked about their car versus my car for a bit, and they absolutely love their electric Mustangs, and they can outperform. One guy used to have gas, and now he can go faster.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and the reason all these prices are dropping is because Tesla, up until 2020, Tesla pretty much had a monopoly on long-range EVs. But now there's a whole bunch of car companies getting into the long-range EV business, and they're all trying to knock each other out. And they're all looking over their shoulders at this promised Chinese electric vehicle put out by BYD, which is supposedly going to be a long-range EV, brand new, for like $18,000 before tax credits. So, now's the time. If you've been thinking, maybe someday I'll get an electric car, this is the year to get the electric car. Okay, moving on. We're running out of time here. Next story. This week, the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, is expected to announce its decision on Chevron deference. And Chevron deference is the idea that federal agencies can use their expertise to set regulations, like how many parts per billion of benzene you can be exposed to. And that is being challenged because the companies that like to put benzene in your water don't like to be regulated like that, and they would rather have judges, people with no training in biology or microbiology or chemical, chemistry. They want to appeal everything to judges. They want judges to be the final say on all these things. And way back 40 years ago, judges realized when the environmental regulations were starting, judges were like, we don't know anything about biochemistry. We shouldn't be making these decisions. And so the whole Chevron deference was that you let an agency with its experts set these regulations unless there's something wrong, and then you can appeal and put it before a judge, and often judges have changed some of these regulations. But the go-to, the fallback is that you let the federal agency set the regulations in the first place. So anyway, a lot of billionaires really hate this. Harlan Crow, the billionaire that apparently owns Clarence Thomas, wants it tossed. And if you've been following the news, you know that this billionaire Harlan Crow's given Clarence Thomas like $20 million.
Allegedly.
Well, no, it's not allegedly the gift giving, because
Okay.
Thomas has reported it.
Right.
What's alleged is that this has any influence on Thomas's decision. That's what
Right.
That's what we're alleging.
Yes.
And it's also pretty clear that Thomas, this is called the Roberts Court because Justice Roberts is the quote-unquote Chief Justice. But it's also pretty clear that Thomas is really the one calling the shots,
Oh, boy.
because he's the one that sets these policies and then they happen. So that decision's going to come out this week. If the judges, as they're expected to, toss out Chevron deference, it's going to be chaos, because regulatory agencies will literally be no longer able to regulate, and instead politically appointed judges will be making all the decisions, which will tie up the courts and usually end in bad decisions and blah blah blah. But if you care about the environment, it's important to keep an eye out for the Chevron deference decision, probably this week. Okay, last story real quick. California legislature's break with Governor Newsom. This Kevin Kamps referred to this earlier. The state legislature has told Governor Newsom, we're not giving Pacific Gas and Electric the $400 million that you promised them for the next payment to keep the Diablo nuclear plant open, because it makes no sense. And so that is a really heartening thing, that finally the legislature has stood up to this nuclear crazed governor and said no mas. So that's it for this show. Ending on a high note. Thank you very much for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No,